Ready.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you to the Climate Action Campaign for inviting us to speak today about a really exciting and significant opportunity we have with the passage of the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. Billions of dollars available to directly support our farmers and growers in rural communities and to address the growing threat of climate change events. I want to also thank the Botanic Gardens at the historic Barnes Park, where we're standing right now, for hosting us today. My name is Betsy Kofia. I am the state representative for the 103rd District. The 103rd is all of Leelanau County, about half of Grand Traverse County, and a small portion of Benzie County. And my district includes Traverse City, so welcome to the 103rd. As I mentioned, I'm very excited to stand here today and speak with you all about a once-in-a-generation level of federal funding made available through the Inflation Reduction Act, which will allow Michigan's farmers, ranchers, and growers to transition to climate-smart agricultural practices and technologies and to clean energy, and provide funding and tools to help them better weather the changing climate impacts on their crop yields and their long-term sustainability as farmers who literally feed us. These are game-changing investments, especially for the people here in northern Michigan. I think Commissioner Andrews can back me up when I say that our agricultural heritage is a huge part of who we are as a region. We have a lot of love and appreciation for our small and medium-sized long-term family farms and the way that they are such a part of our community here in northern Michigan. However, as I mentioned, they, along with farmers and growers across the country and the world, are facing challenges like evolving global market pressures, changing climate events that are making it very difficult for our local farms to sustain their businesses and their way of life, even as they power Michigan's second largest economic sector, agriculture. We've seen this in the challenges here in the cherry capital of the world to our region's agricultural sector, especially with our tart cherry industry in particular. We appreciate the Biden administration and the bipartisan effort, including Senators Stabenow and Peters and other champions in Congress, in addressing this by passing the Bipartisan Inflation Reduction Act to assist our farmers in addressing these challenges head-on. I recently met with a farmer here in Grand Traverse County. He's a sixth-generation fruit farmer with a proud tradition, and he mentioned, he was talking about planning for the future. He's, I believe, in his 30s, and he's looking ahead, trying to figure out how to keep his family farm sustainable. And he mentioned a challenge that he faces is the cost of refrigeration for his significant fruit production, cherries and apples across the state of Michigan and beyond. That it's a significant cost, and what he would like to do is he's mapping out his future business plan is transition away from current reliance on grid electricity to actually having his own solar array to power this refrigeration unit. But as he named, he doesn't have the funds to upfront such the cost involved in purchasing and installing a solar array. He needs to find a way to cover that and transition to clean energy and power his refrigeration unit. The Inflation Reduction Act is investing in rural communities' transition to clean energy to the tune of $14 billion, and it is very targeted to help rural farmers just like the one I mentioned. For example, programs like REAP, or Rural Energy for America programs, the Inflation Reduction Act includes more than $2 billion to cover up to 50% of the clean energy project cost to implement projects just like the one this young farmer was talking to me about, fronting up to 50% of that upfront cost to install a solar array and allow him to have true energy independence and clean energy to power his refrigeration unit on his farm. This funding can support the farmer I mentioned and countless others to cover those upfront costs for solar array and power the farm in a cheaper, more sustainable, and independent way. Another area that the Inflation Reduction Act is helping is in preserving farmland. USDA conservation programs, and we have a farmer here who will speak much more in depth to this program, but USDA conservation programs have historically been underfunded and had 3 farmers waiting for every 1 slot available for those very popular conservation programs. The Inflation Reduction Act and the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service will make $850 billion available for hundreds of thousands of farmers to apply and enact conservation for millions of acres of farmland. So again, when I think as a representative for an agricultural region and how much that's a part of our way of life, that's really exciting to me, that our farmers and growers can access those resources and preserve our farmland. Overall, this is, again, once-in-a-generation IRA funding, enhances our food security, it supports our farmers, growers, and ranchers, our agricultural way of life, and it takes head on the growing impact of climate change. So win-win. I want to thank, again, Senators Stabenow, Peters, the bipartisan members of Congress who championed the Inflation Reduction Act, and President Biden for passing this, and their bold leadership on these forward-thinking investments that prioritize rural communities like the one I represent with smart agriculture. And as finally, before I hand it over to the next speaker, as a representative for the 103 and someone committed to supporting our farmers and addressing climate change, I urge Congress in these budget negotiations to refuse any effort to scale back or cut back on these incredibly important investments in climate sustainability and in supporting our farmers and growers. Please hold the line and continue the funding that has been promised through the Inflation Reduction Act. And with that, I would like to hand the mic over to one of our county commissioners, Grand Traverse County Commissioner T.J. Andrews, to share further remarks.
Thank you, Representative Kofia. And thank you for the opportunity to share my support for continued federal funding for the climate transition, and especially to make sure that rural communities like ours are not getting left behind. Grand Traverse County is literally defined by fruit. We're the cherry capital of the world, home to the National Cherry Fest, Cherry Capital Airport. Apples grown by our farmers nourish families across Michigan and the United States. Wine made from grapes grown right here on the Old Mission Peninsula and the Leelanau Peninsulas, just being harvested as we speak, are winning national awards. Our local economy depends on our fruit farmers. These are primarily farmers, family-run orchards operating on tight margins. Our fruit farmers, in turn, depend on Lake Michigan, the ultimate weather moderator. Our proximity to the lake and our geography result in unique microclimates that are particularly conducive to fruit growing and vineyards in particular. For thousands of years, people up and down Michigan's west coast have reaped the rewards of these rich, productive lands. But our proximity to Lake Michigan also now makes Michigan's west coast fruit farmers particularly susceptible to the effects of climate change. Warming winters, erratic weather patterns, early warm-ups and unpredictable freezes, not enough rain, then too much, too often. The trend is clear though. Lake Michigan is warming year by year with dramatic effects and increasing costs for fruit growers. And our farmers need a lifeline to transition to climate change, to transition to climate smart farming in particular, and we can't do this without outside funding. The 2021 Investment Recovery Act is the largest bill ever enacted to tackle climate change. And with it, Congress committed $40 billion for climate resilient agriculture and clean energy investments for farms and rural communities. Thank you to Senators Stabenow and Peters and all the climate champions in Washington who support the farmers who sustain our economy and nourish our communities. This once-in-a-generation influx of federal dollars helps protect agriculture against the effects of climate change, and it helps communities like ours become part of the climate solution. Whether it's funding for on-farm renewable generation systems which can power farm equipment and offset fossil emissions and save money on utility bills, or programs that are combating new diseases and insects with organic inputs for cleaner soil and water and food and added climate benefits, Grand Traverse County farmers, and those of us who eat their cherries and their apples and drink their wine and their cider, we need those dollars to flow into our community. Now is the time to plan and roll out these programs and distribute these dollars. I am here to support continued historic investments and to oppose efforts that are underway to scale them back. Thank you for being here and for listening. And now I'm honored to introduce Bob Thompson, President of the Michigan Farmers Union.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Bob Thompson. My family and I own and operate a 600-acre Centennial Farm located in central Michigan, where we raise traditional cash crops, corn, wheat, oats, and hay. As president of the Michigan Farmers Educational and Cooperative Union of America, It is a real honor for me to be here today to participate in this event. Our membership, which includes a multitude of small and medium-sized independent progressive family farmers, know all too well the impact that climate change has forced upon their operations and the true cost that they endure. It is critical that the $20 billion for climate-smart conservation practices contained in the Inflation Reduction Act, fought for and won by our own Senators Stabenow and Peters, be maintained and strengthened. An overwhelming majority of our next generation of family farmers, both traditional and non-traditional, say that being able to engage in climate-smart conservation and regenerative farming practices are principal goals. Unfortunately, current USDA conservation programs designed to help them are generally underfunded and oversubscribed. As the representative just mentioned, on average, there are 3 farmers that would like to participate for every slot that's available. By providing the additional resources and incentives for climate-smart practices, the IRA allows Michigan farmers and ranchers to be part of the climate solution. Further, the increased funding afforded by the IRA monies for USDA's popular and effective Farm Bill conservation programs will help energize rural communities and economies and improve climate resilience. As the next Farm Bill is debated and ultimately passed, the Michigan Farmers Union calls upon Congress to not only maintain, but to increase the baseline funding for USDA conservation programs by the $20 billion in climate-smart agricultural policies that the IRA allocated. Family farmers operate on a very narrow margin as it is. We must level the playing field and provide them with the resources necessary to support climate-friendly agriculture and conservation practices. I thank you for your time. Thank you.